The Khmer Rouge movement, one of the most devastating and infamous political regimes of the 20th century, left an indelible mark on Cambodia and the world. Emerging from the complex interplay of Cambodian history, Cold War politics, and revolutionary ideology, the Khmer Rouge led Cambodia into one of the most brutal episodes of mass violence, resulting in the deaths of an estimated 1.7 million people from 1975 to 1979. To understand the Khmer Rouge, it is essential to explore its origins, ideology, rise to power, reign of terror, and eventual downfall. Origins and ideology. The Khmer Rouge, or the Red Khmers, was a radical communist movement led by Pol Pot, born Saloth Sar. Its roots lay in the Cambodian Communist Party, later renamed the Communist Party of Kampuchea, which itself emerged from the global spread of Marxist-Leninist ideologies during the 20th century. Cambodian communism was influenced by neighboring movements in Vietnam and China, especially the Maoist version of communism, which emphasized agrarian revolution, peasant uprisings, and self-sufficiency. Maoist principles, coupled with the nationalistic fervor rooted in Cambodia's history of foreign domination, shaped the Khmer Rouge's ideology. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, Cambodian communism remained a fringe movement. King Norodom Sihanouk, who ruled Cambodia with authoritarian tendencies, effectively kept the communists at bay through his strategy of balancing relations with both communist and Western powers. However, regional conflicts, particularly the Vietnam War, drastically altered Cambodia's political landscape. The United States bombing campaigns on Cambodian territory between 1969 and 1973, designed to target North Vietnamese forces, devastated rural areas and displaced hundreds of thousands of peasants. This created widespread resentment toward the central government and increased support for the Khmer Rouge, who capitalized on the chaos by presenting themselves as defenders of the people. Rise to power. The Khmer Rouge slowly gained strength during the 1960s and early 1970s, building up a guerrilla force primarily composed of peasants from rural areas. While Sihanouk's government was initially able to suppress communist activities, the internal strife caused by his policies and increasing external pressures made Cambodia vulnerable to insurgency. In 1970, General Lon Nol ousted Sihanouk in a coup, establishing a pro-American, anti-communist regime. This shift exacerbated instability, leading to a civil war between Lon Nol's government and the Khmer Rouge. The Khmer Rouge strategically aligned itself with the exiled Sihanouk, gaining further support among rural Cambodians who revered the former king. The alliance was opportunistic, as Sihanouk's royalist supporters were far from the Marxist-Leninist ideology of the Khmer Rouge. Nevertheless, with backing from North Vietnam and China, and using the chaos of the ongoing civil war, the Khmer Rouge steadily increased its influence. In April 1975, after 5 years of civil war, the Khmer Rouge captured Phnom Penh, the Cambodian capital. This victory marked the beginning of one of the most radical and brutal experiments in communist revolution. Democratic Kampuchea and the Reign of Terror. Upon seizing power, the Khmer Rouge established Democratic Kampuchea, a regime that sought to radically transform Cambodian society into a classless, agrarian utopia. They aimed to abolish capitalism, urban life, and the remnants of colonial influence by returning the country to its pure roots. This was to be achieved through mass collectivization, forced labor, and the abolition of private property, money, markets, religion, education, and family structures. The Khmer Rouge believed that Cambodia's salvation lay in the rural peasantry, whom they regarded as the purest representatives of the nation's revolutionary potential. They considered the urban elite, intellectuals, and anyone with ties to the previous government or foreign powers to be enemies of the revolution. As a result, cities were emptied in a matter of days, with the entire urban population forced into the countryside to work in collective farms. Phnom Penh, once a bustling metropolis, became a ghost town. The Khmer Rouge's policies of forced labor, starvation, disease, and mass executions would result in the deaths of roughly a quarter of Cambodia's population during their 4-year reign. The regime's social engineering extended to the elimination of social, cultural, and intellectual life. The Khmer Rouge conducted purges of intellectuals, monks, and professionals, as well as anyone they deemed to have foreign sympathies or connections to the old regime. Even wearing glasses could be seen as evidence of being an intellectual, warranting execution. Schools, hospitals, and religious institutions were closed, and the regime sought to completely sever Cambodia from the outside world. One of the most infamous aspects of Khmer Rouge rule was the establishment of torture and execution centers, the most notorious being S21, Tuol Sleng Prison, in Phnom Penh. Thousands of suspected enemies of the state were tortured, forced to confess to fabricated crimes, and then executed. The regime's paranoia extended to internal purges as well, with many high-ranking Khmer Rouge officials being arrested and executed as suspected traitors. Ideology and methods. The Khmer Rouge's ideology was heavily influenced by Maoist thought, but with an extreme focus on nationalism and racial purity. The regime glorified the rural peasantry as the foundation of society and viewed urban Cambodians, ethnic minorities, and foreigners with suspicion. They sought to isolate Cambodia from external influences, aiming to make the country entirely self-reliant. Any ties to Vietnam, the West, or other foreign powers were seen as betrayals of the nation. The Khmer Rouge also practiced a version of collectivism that went beyond traditional communist practices. In an attempt to destroy any remnants of individualism, they abolished private property, banned personal relationships, and even sought to undermine familial bonds. Children were separated from their parents and indoctrinated into the regime's ideology, while adults were often subjected to grueling labor and starvation in collective farms. Downfall of the Khmer Rouge. The Khmer Rouge regime began to unravel due to a combination of internal instability and external pressure. Pol Pot's extreme policies alienated even those within the movement, leading to internal purges that weakened the regime. The Khmer Rouge's paranoia also extended to Cambodia's relations with its neighbors, particularly Vietnam. Despite having received support from Vietnam during the early stages of the revolution, the Khmer Rouge viewed the Vietnamese with deep suspicion, seeing them as a historical enemy and a threat to Cambodian sovereignty. Tensions between Cambodia and Vietnam escalated into open conflict, with cross-border skirmishes occurring throughout the late 1970s. In December 1978, after repeated provocations and attacks by the Khmer Rouge on Vietnamese territory, Vietnam launched a full-scale invasion of Cambodia. By January 1979, Vietnamese forces had captured Phnom Penh, bringing an end to the Khmer Rouge regime. The fall of the Khmer Rouge did not immediately bring peace to Cambodia. While Pol Pot and his followers were driven from power, they continued to wage a guerrilla insurgency from the Cambodian-Thai border for many years, supported by China and elements of the international community that opposed Vietnam's occupation of Cambodia. It was not until the 1990s, after years of civil strife, that the Khmer Rouge finally disbanded. Aftermath and legacy. The legacy of the Khmer Rouge remains a painful chapter in Cambodian history. The regime's policies left deep scars on the population, with millions of families having lost loved ones to the violence, starvation, and forced labor of the Khmer Rouge era. The country was left impoverished, its infrastructure destroyed, and its intellectual and cultural life shattered. In the decades following the fall of the Khmer Rouge, efforts were made to seek justice for the crimes committed during the regime. The United Nations and the Cambodian government established the Extraordinary Chambers in the Courts of Cambodia, ECCC, in 2003, which aimed to prosecute senior leaders of the Khmer Rouge for genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. However, many of the key figures of the Khmer Rouge, including Pol Pot, died before they could be brought to justice. Despite the Khmer Rouge's violent overthrow, its impact on Cambodian society is still felt today. The memory of the genocide continues to shape the nation's identity, and the scars of that period are deeply etched into the country's culture and political landscape. The Khmer Rouge movement remains one of the most haunting examples of the dangers of totalitarian ideology taken to its extreme, a stark reminder of the human cost of revolutionary zeal unchecked by humanity.